Alright, we're moving on to a faster clip now. We have our next speaker, Roelof, here to talk about iPhone development. So let's give him a round of applause.
Thanks, guys. If you're thinking about starting developing apps for iPhone, I'm going to try to get you started in 5 minutes. Actually, there are two ways to develop apps for the iPhone. One, you can just create little websites in HTML, CSS and JavaScript, etc, etc. And the other way is you can create an app for the App Store, and you can also sort of mix the two. But I'll get back to get around that later. And but if you create apps for the App Store, you do that in Objective-C, and you have to submit them for Apple. But the third thing you have to do is you have to register yourself with Apple, pay 99 bucks, and you need to buy yourself a Mac if you don't have one, and you need a few devices like an iPhone or an iPad or whatever. What you get is you will get the Xcode development environment and access to the documentation, etc, etc, etc. It works on that one, doesn't work on that one. Then you can create applications that run on all the devices. It's not that you have to target them on all different kinds. It's just one. There are some little differences, but you know, you get your way around that. And what you should know is you should at least know a little bit about C programming, and you will learn Objective-C programming, and maybe you should learn some other things like HTML and server-side stuff if your app needs that. Well, Apple did a pretty good job creating a set of frameworks called Cocoa, and they more or less took care of everything, so you only have to focus on your own app. And what I do when I'm programming something, usually I just look at the documentation. The documentation is pretty good, and then I'll find my way from there. And if I don't, I sometimes look at the WWDC video, which is Apple's Developers Conference, and if that doesn't work, I go on the web. But then I find out that I usually end up at one site, which is called Stack Overflow, and most topics, programming topics, are discussed there. It's very good. I can recommend that one. I also recommend a few books. It's kind of weird to recommend books in this time, but the best technical book I've ever seen, and it's really amazing, is a book called macOS Programming. You also have an iPhone version, but it's really good, and you should read it. Take a week, maybe 2 weeks, and you really get the concepts of programming for the Mac and for iPhone, which is basically the same thing. Then if you have done that for a year, you can go to this book, which is called Cocoa Design Patterns, and it really teaches you how to program the right way, that you do not write 100 lines of code if you could also do it in 5. Well, what you need is not only a programmer. What you really need is also a graphical designer, very important with Apple stuff, but also a marketeer. It's lots of work creating an iPhone app. Well, people sometimes say it's only a few weeks, but if you really do it from start to finish with all the details figured out, as it should be on Apple with Apple stuff, that's a lot of work. And it's not good if nobody notices your app. And the hardest thing about iPhone development is getting it noticed. So you need the marketeer. As I mentioned before, you don't have to do it with C. You can also do an HTML5 app. And what you can do is build a little wrapper that allows you to put your small website as an app on the App Store. Say you're a broadcaster and you want to target multiple platforms. That's what you should do, or could do, is you create a little website that runs on all platforms, and but people download it from the App Store, so it feels like an app, which is where people spend most of their time. If you're a one-person company or just do it as a hobby, I would not recommend doing it on the side. You should choose for iPhone or for Android or for websites. Don't do it all. Be good at one thing. Don't try to do it all. It's too complicated for that. A disadvantage of the Apple stuff, and there's another speaker about that, is that they sometimes reject applications. But I see that as you can compare that to the birds of flying. When planes were just invented, a lot of them crashed, people died, etc, etc. And the reasons apps get rejected are most of the time pretty basic, and Apple and also developers has learned a lot over time, so I think it will be better later on. But it's the one bad thing about iPhone development. The good thing about it, that it's a lot of fun. I programmed for lots of platforms. I did lots of different things, but this is the best thing I ever did. If you want to know more, you know how to contact me, and I hope on 200 more followers tomorrow on Twitter. Thanks, guys.